The thundering rhythm of Spirit's hooves stopped dead when the baby's cry pierced the arena, 8 years of training evaporating in a heartbeat. Sarah's world tilted as her champion horse ignored the competition completely, turning his massive head to stare with unnerving focus at the startled mother, clutching her infant in the stands. Before we continue, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment where in the world you're watching from. Let's go. Thunder rumbled in the distance as Sarah Miller adjusted her dusty white Stetson and took a deep breath. The familiar scent of leather, hay, and excitement filled her nostrils. After 15 years of competitive barrel racing, she still felt the same rush of adrenaline before each event. But today was different. Today, she wasn't the one competing. Her eyes remained fixed on the magnificent chestnut quarter horse pawing at the ground impatiently, his muscular body tense with anticipation. "Easy, Spirit," she whispered, running her hand along his gleaming neck. "Save that energy for the arena." Spirit had been part of her life for 8 years, a gift from her late father when she was just 19. They had traveled thousands of miles together, shared countless hotel rooms, and collected more trophies than her small ranch house could display. But 6 months ago, everything changed when Sarah discovered she was pregnant. The doctor's warnings about riding during pregnancy had been clear, and despite her initial resistance, Sarah knew she had to prioritize her baby's safety over her passion for competition. The decision to let her longtime friend and fellow barrel racer Jake Thompson ride Spirit for the season had been difficult but necessary. Watching them from the sidelines stirred a complex mixture of emotions within her: pride, nostalgia, and a hint of jealousy she tried to ignore. "How's he feeling today?" Jake asked, approaching with his characteristic confident stride. His competition shirt, adorned with sponsors' logos, gleamed under the arena lights. "Restless. Ready," Sarah replied, passing him the reins. "He knows it's a big day." Jake nodded, his eyes serious. "The Miller Memorial Rodeo. Your dad would be proud to see his namesake event become one of the biggest in the circuit." Sarah swallowed the lump forming in her throat. "Win this one for him, will you?" "We'll do our best," Jake said, mounting Spirit with practiced ease. The horse shifted beneath him, adjusting to the different weight and riding style. "How's the little cowboy doing?" he asked, nodding toward Sarah's rounded belly. "Or cowgirl," Sarah corrected with a smile, placing a protective hand over her stomach. "Kicking up a storm today. Must be excited for the show." As Jake guided Spirit toward the preparation area, Sarah made her way to the stands. Her mother had saved her a seat in the front row, perfect for capturing every moment on the small camera she clutched in her hands. "How are you feeling, honey?" Linda Miller asked, her weathered face creased with concern as Sarah lowered herself onto the metal bench. "I'm fine, Mom. Just the usual backache." Sarah adjusted her position, trying to find comfort despite her 7-month pregnant body protesting against the hard seat. The announcer's voice boomed through the speakers, introducing the next event: barrel racing. Sarah felt her heart rate increase as the first competitors took their turns, weaving through the cloverleaf pattern with varying degrees of success. She analyzed each run with a critical eye, noting mistakes and impressive maneuvers with the perspective of someone who had spent half her life perfecting the sport. When Jake and Spirit were announced, a cheer rose from the crowd. Despite her temporary retirement, Sarah remained something of a local celebrity, and by extension, so did her horse. She held her breath as they entered the arena, Spirit's chestnut coat gleaming under the lights, his powerful legs carrying him forward with determined strides. The starting buzzer sounded, and they were off. Spirit moved with the precision and power that had made him one of the top barrel racing horses in the circuit. Sarah leaned forward, her eyes following their every move as they rounded the first barrel perfectly, maintaining the ideal distance to prevent knocking it over while not losing precious seconds. "That's it, boy," she whispered, as if Spirit could somehow hear her encouragement through the roaring crowd. The second barrel came and went without incident, Jake guiding Spirit with subtle shifts of weight and gentle tugs on the reins. They were on pace for a record time as they approached the final barrel. Sarah could feel it, that perfect harmony between rider and horse that only came when everything aligned just right. And then it happened. Just as Spirit rounded the third barrel and prepared for the final sprint to the finish line, a piercing cry cut through the ambient noise of the arena. A baby's wail, high-pitched and desperate, rose from somewhere in the crowd to Sarah's right. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion. Spirit's ears pricked forward. His powerful stride faltered. Instead of charging toward the finish line as he had done hundreds of times before, the horse hesitated, his rhythm broken. Jake, caught off guard by the unexpected change, lurched forward slightly before regaining his balance. He urged Spirit forward with a gentle squeeze of his legs, but the horse had already broken his momentum. More surprising still, Spirit turned his head toward the source of the crying. The crowd's cheering faltered, replaced by confused murmurs. Sarah stood up, ignoring the discomfort in her lower back, her eyes wide with disbelief. In all their years together, Spirit had never broken concentration during a run. He was the epitome of focus, the perfect competition horse who could tune out distractions and focus solely on the task at hand. "What's he doing?" Linda whispered beside her, equally baffled by the horse's behavior. Sarah could only shake her head, unable to offer an explanation as Spirit completed the run at a much slower pace than his usual thunderous sprint. Their time was ruined. Any chance at winning evaporated in that moment of hesitation. Jake's face reflected a mixture of confusion and disappointment as they crossed the finish line, but Spirit wasn't done surprising them. Instead of following Jake's guidance toward the exit gate, the horse turned and walked deliberately toward the stands, specifically toward the section where the crying had originated. The baby's wails had subsided to hiccuping sobs, but Spirit seemed to know exactly where to go. He approached the fence separating the arena from the spectators, his ears forward, his eyes focused with an intensity that Sarah recognized from their years together. It was the look he got when he was trying to understand something new. Jake, realizing he had lost control of the situation, wisely loosened his grip on the reins, allowing Spirit to follow whatever instinct had taken hold of him. The crowd fell silent, witnessing something none of them had seen before. A rodeo horse, abandoning its training and purpose, drawn to a crying child. Sarah found herself moving along the front of the stands, following Spirit's path. Her heart pounded as she watched her horse approach a young woman in the third row, who was cradling a fussing infant against her shoulder, attempting to soothe the child while looking increasingly embarrassed by the attention. Spirit stopped directly in front of the woman and her baby, the horse's large, intelligent eyes fixed on them with an unwavering gaze. The baby, sensing something unusual, turned its tear-streaked face toward the horse and fell silent, wide-eyed with wonder at the magnificent creature before them. A collective gasp rippled through the arena as Spirit lowered his head, stretching his neck as far as he could toward the child. The mother, initially alarmed, seemed to sense no threat from the gentle giant and cautiously moved closer to the fence, allowing her baby a better view of the horse. Sarah reached them just as a rodeo official approached, presumably to lead Spirit away. She held up her hand to stop him, her instincts telling her that something extraordinary was happening, something that shouldn't be interrupted. "It's okay," she assured the official. "He's my horse. He won't hurt anyone." The mother looked at Sarah, confusion evident in her tired eyes. "I'm so sorry about your run," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Lily's been fussy all day, but I really wanted to see the rodeo. I should have left when she started crying." Sarah shook her head, dismissing the apology. "Don't worry about the run. I'm more interested in why my horse is so fixated on your baby." She studied the young woman more carefully, noting the dark circles under her eyes and the slightly disheveled appearance that spoke of long, sleepless nights caring for a newborn. "Has he ever done anything like this before?" the woman asked, bouncing her baby gently as Lily continued to stare at Spirit with fascination. "Never," Sarah replied, her hand instinctively moving to her own pregnant belly. "He's always been the most focused competition horse I've ever known. Nothing distracts him during a run, not thunder, not other animals, nothing, until today." As Jake dismounted and joined them at the fence, his confusion was evident. "Sarah, what's going on? I've never seen him act like this before." "I have no idea," Sarah admitted, watching as Spirit continued to gaze at the baby with an almost human-like intensity. The horse's ears remained forward, his eyes soft yet focused. It was the gentlest she'd ever seen him around strangers. The young mother shifted uncomfortably under the scrutiny of the growing crowd around them. "I'm Emma," she offered, adjusting her hold on Lily. "We just moved to town last month. This is my first rodeo, actually." "Well, you've certainly made an impression," Sarah said with a warm smile, trying to put Emma at ease. "I'm Sarah Miller, and this is my horse, Spirit. The distracted cowboy over there is Jake." Jake tipped his hat in greeting, still holding Spirit's reins loosely, allowing the horse to maintain his position near the fence. "Sorry about all this, ma'am. Can't explain it." Emma's eyes widened slightly. "Wait, Sarah Miller? The barrel racing champion? I've seen your name on posters around town." Sarah nodded, a flush of pride warming her cheeks despite the strangeness of the situation. "Former champion, at least until this little one arrives," she said, patting her belly. The baby in Emma's arms squirmed and made a soft cooing sound, drawing Spirit's attention even more intently. The horse nickered gently, a sound Sarah recognized as one he usually reserved for her when she brought him treats or after a particularly good training session. "This is the craziest thing," Jake muttered, shaking his head. "We just lost our chance at the purse because a horse got distracted by a baby." A rodeo official approached again, more insistent this time. "Folks, we need to keep the program moving. There are other competitors waiting." Jake nodded and prepared to lead Spirit away, but the horse planted his feet firmly, refusing to budge. When Jake applied more pressure to the reins, Spirit snorted and tossed his head in protest. "Sarah, a little help here?" Jake asked, his frustration evident. Sarah moved closer to her horse, stroking his neck soothingly. "Come on, boy. Time to go," she coaxed, but Spirit remained fixated on Emma and Lily. Emma looked increasingly uncomfortable. "I'm so sorry about this. Should we leave?" she asked, already gathering her diaper bag. "No, please don't," Sarah said quickly, her curiosity overriding her embarrassment at the disruption they were causing. "There's something going on here, and I'd like to understand it." She turned to the official. "Can we move to the side? We'll get out of the arena." With a reluctant nod, the official agreed, and Jake led Spirit, who finally allowed himself to be moved as long as they were heading toward a gate near Emma's section, out of the competition area. The announcer resumed the program, calling the next competitor, but many eyes remained on the unusual scene unfolding at the side of the arena. Once they were gathered in a less conspicuous area near the concession stands, Sarah studied Emma more carefully. The young woman couldn't have been more than 22 or 23, and there was something in her demeanor that spoke of recent hardship. Her clothes, though clean, showed signs of wear, and the diaper bag at her feet was frayed at the edges. "How old is Lily?" Sarah asked, genuinely interested. "Just over 3 months," Emma replied, her expression softening as she looked down at her daughter. "She's been through a lot already, poor thing." There was something in Emma's tone that made Sarah's heart clench. "Is she okay?" Emma hesitated, then sighed. "She was born with a heart murmur. Nothing too serious, the doctors say, but it requires regular checkups." That's partly why we moved here, to be closer to the children's hospital in the city. Spirit, who had been standing quietly next to Jake, suddenly pulled forward again, stretching his neck toward Lily. The baby, who had been dozing against her mother's shoulder, opened her eyes and reached out a tiny hand toward the horse's velvet muzzle. "It's like they know each other," Jake said, his earlier frustration giving way to wonder. Emma's expression shifted from embarrassment to awe as she watched the interaction. "Is it safe for her to touch him?" she asked hesitantly. Sarah nodded. "Spirit's as gentle as they come with people he likes, and he clearly has a thing for your daughter." With careful movements, Emma stepped closer to the fence, allowing Lily's small fingers to brush against Spirit's nose. The horse remained perfectly still, his breathing slow and steady, his eyes half closed in what Sarah recognized as contentment. "I've never seen anything like this," Linda said, having joined them from the stands. She gave Sarah a meaningful look. "Reminds me of how your father's old gelding used to act with you when you were small." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine at her mother's words. Her father's horse, Thunder, had indeed shown an unusual protective instinct toward her as a child. Her father used to say that Thunder had recognized something special in her, a natural connection with horses that would later define her life and career. "Has Lily been around horses before?" Sarah asked, though she suspected she already knew the answer. Emma shook her head. "Never. It's just been the two of us since before she was born, and we've always lived in the city." She paused, hesitating before adding, "Her father left when I told him I was pregnant." The simple statement, delivered with practiced neutrality, revealed volumes about the young woman's situation. Sarah felt a surge of empathy, remembering the stories of single mothers she'd met through her charity work with the Rodeo Association. "Well, it seems like she's made a pretty powerful friend today," Sarah said, watching as Spirit continued to stand patiently, allowing the baby to pat his nose with uncoordinated movements. Jake checked his watch. "Sarah, we should get Spirit back to the trailer. The prize ceremony will be starting soon, even if we won't be part of it." Sarah nodded reluctantly, not wanting to break the strange spell that had fallen over them. "Emma, would you like to come see Spirit after the rodeo? Our ranch isn't far from town." The invitation surprised even Sarah herself. She wasn't usually so quick to invite strangers into her life, but something about Emma and Lily pulled at her, a feeling she couldn't quite explain. Emma looked startled, then grateful. "I'd like that, if it's not too much trouble." They exchanged phone numbers, and as Jake finally led Spirit away, the horse kept turning his head to look back at Lily until they disappeared around a corner. "That was the strangest thing I've ever seen at a rodeo," Linda commented as they walked back to their seats. "And I've been watching them for 40 years. Sarah nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. "Mom, do you remember what Dad used to say about Thunder? How horses can sense things about people that we can't?" Linda's expression grew thoughtful. "He always believed that horses had a kind of sixth sense, said they could recognize old souls." She glanced back toward where Emma was gathering her things. "You think that's what happened here?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted, "but I'm going to find out." As they settled back into their seats to watch the remainder of the competition, Sarah found her thoughts drifting away from the arena. Instead of focusing on the riders and their times, she kept thinking about the look in Spirit's eyes when he'd first heard Lily's cry. A look of recognition, almost, as if he'd been searching for something and finally found it. The baby's heart condition, Emma's situation as a single mother struggling to make ends meet, Spirit's unprecedented behavior, it all swirled in Sarah's mind, pieces of a puzzle she couldn't quite fit together. But one thing was clear. Today's interrupted run was just the beginning of something much larger than a missed competition opportunity. Her hand came to rest on her belly as her own baby kicked energetically, almost as if responding to her thoughts. Sarah smiled, a sense of anticipation building within her. Whatever connection Spirit had sensed with Lily, Sarah was determined to understand it, not just for her own curiosity, but because she had the inexplicable feeling that both Emma and Lily needed them, perhaps as much as Spirit seemed to need them in return. The following afternoon, Sarah stood by the paddock fence, watching Spirit graze peacefully in the late summer sunshine. The horse showed no signs of the strange behavior that had cost them the competition yesterday, having returned to his usual composed self. Sarah still couldn't wrap her mind around what had happened. In 8 years, Spirit had never once broken concentration during a run. Not through thunderstorms, not when a snake had slithered across their path during a practice session. Not even when another horse had bucked its rider and caused chaos in an adjacent arena. Yet something about Lily's cry had pierced through Spirit's legendary focus, compelling him to abandon years of training and instinct. "Still trying to figure it out?" Jake asked, approaching with 2 mugs of coffee. He handed one to Sarah and leaned against the fence beside her. "Wouldn't you be?" Sarah accepted the mug gratefully, inhaling the rich aroma before taking a careful sip. "It's like he was possessed or something." Jake shrugged. "Horses are strange creatures sometimes, more intuitive than we give them credit for." "This was different," Sarah insisted. "You didn't see his eyes, Jake. It was like he recognized something in that baby's cry." Before Jake could respond, the crunch of tires on gravel announced a visitor. They turned to see a modest sedan making its way up the long driveway to the ranch house. Even from a distance, Sarah recognized Emma behind the wheel, looking hesitant as she parked near the main house. "Your mysterious baby whisperer is here," Jake said with a smile. "Want me to make myself scarce?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "Don't be ridiculous. Besides, I want you to see if Spirit does it again. Maybe yesterday was just some weird fluke." As they walked toward the house, Sarah observed Spirit's reaction. The horse had lifted his head from grazing, ears pricked forward, watching the car with unusual intensity. When Emma emerged with Lily bundled against her chest in a faded baby carrier, Spirit nickered loudly and trotted to the edge of the paddock closest to them, his behavior more like an eager puppy than a seasoned competition horse. "Well, that answers that question," Jake muttered. "Not a fluke." Emma approached them with a tentative smile, looking both grateful for the invitation and uncertain of her welcome. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything," she said, adjusting Lily in her carrier. The baby was awake, her wide blue eyes taking in the unfamiliar surroundings with the curious gaze of infancy. "Not at all," Sarah assured her, leading the way to a shaded patio area with comfortable chairs. "We're pretty informal around here. That's Jake, who you met yesterday, and my mom should be out with some iced tea soon. She's been cooking since dawn, convinced that you must be starving." Emma's shoulders relaxed slightly at Sarah's warm welcome. "That's very kind of her. We don't want to impose. Trust me, feeding people makes her happy. She's been alone too much since my dad passed." Sarah gestured to a chair. "Please sit. You must be tired." As Emma settled into a chair, carefully adjusting Lily on her lap, Sarah noticed the dark circles under the young mother's eyes and the slight tremble in her hands. Whatever struggles Emma was facing, they were clearly taking a toll. Linda emerged from the house carrying a tray loaded with glasses of iced tea, a plate of sandwiches, and freshly baked cookies. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, confirming Sarah's prediction and setting the tray on the table. "Taking care of a little one doesn't leave much time for cooking. I remember that much from raising this one." She nodded toward Sarah with a fond smile. "Thank you so much, Mrs. Miller," Emma said, her voice tinged with genuine gratitude that seemed to extend beyond the simple offering of food. "Linda, please," Sarah's mother insisted, taking a seat and immediately reaching for Lily. "May I hold this little angel while you eat something?" The ease with which Emma handed over her baby spoke volumes about how desperately she needed a moment to herself. As she reached for a sandwich, Sarah noticed a faint bruise on Emma's wrist, partially hidden by her sleeve. Emma caught her looking and quickly tugged the fabric down, her expression momentarily guarded. An uncomfortable silence fell, broken only when Jake cleared his throat. "I should check on Spirit. He seems pretty worked up with you folks here." He nodded toward the paddock, where Spirit was still pacing along the fence line, occasionally stopping to stare in their direction. "Would you like to bring Lily to see him after you've eaten?" Sarah offered, deliberately shifting the focus away from what she'd seen. "He seems pretty eager for a reunion." Emma's face brightened. "I'd like that. It was so strange yesterday, but also special somehow. I've never seen Lily so calm around anyone or anything new. Usually she's pretty fussy with strangers." As Emma ate with the desperate efficiency of someone who rarely got to enjoy a meal while it was still warm, Sarah observed her more carefully. The young woman's clothes, though clean, were well worn. The diaper bag at her feet was packed to bursting, suggesting she carried everything she might possibly need wherever she went, prepared for any emergency. The car she'd arrived in was at least 15 years old, with visible rust spots and a rear bumper held on with what looked like duct tape. All signs pointed to someone living on the edge financially, perhaps one unexpected expense away from disaster. Sarah had seen it before in the rural community where she'd grown up. Young families struggling to make ends meet, especially single parents without support. "So, Emma," Linda said conversationally, bouncing Lily gently on her knee. "Sarah mentioned you just moved to the area. How are you finding it?" "It's been an adjustment," Emma admitted. "The city was all I knew, but after Lily was born, I wanted something safer, cleaner, somewhere she could grow up with fresh air and open spaces." She hesitated before adding, "And the rent is cheaper here, which helps." "Finding work can be tough in a small town," Linda said sympathetically. "Are you settled in that way?" Emma's gaze dropped to her plate. "I'm working at the diner on Main Street for now. The hours are flexible, which is good for Lily's appointments, but..." She trailed off, leaving unsaid what was clearly a constant worry. "Childcare?" Sarah guessed, familiar with the challenge from friends who had started families. Emma nodded. "My neighbor watches her during my shifts, but she's elderly and can't do it long term. I'm still figuring things out." Sarah and Linda exchanged glances, a silent communication born of years of shared understanding. Before either could speak, however, a loud whinny from the paddock drew their attention. Spirit had grown increasingly agitated, tossing his head and pacing more frantically. "I think someone's getting impatient," Jake called from where he now stood by the gate, ready to lead Spirit out if they decided to introduce him to Lily properly. Emma stood, brushing crumbs from her jeans. "Is it safe? I mean, he's so big and Lily's so small." "Spirit is the gentlest horse I've ever known with people," Sarah assured her, rising to her feet with a slight wince as her back protested. "Besides, after what we saw yesterday, I think he'd be more likely to protect Lily than harm her." As Linda handed Lily back to Emma, the baby gurgled happily, waving her tiny fists in the air. They walked slowly toward the paddock, Sarah watching carefully for Spirit's reaction. The horse grew still as they approached, his eyes fixed on Lily with that same intense focus from the rodeo. "It's the strangest thing," Jake said, shaking his head in wonder. "I've never seen him like this with anyone, not even you, Sarah." As they reached the fence, Spirit stretched his neck over the top rail, his nostrils flaring gently as he took in Lily's scent. The baby, for her part, seemed equally fascinated, reaching toward the horse with unexpected determination. "She wants to touch him," Emma said, sounding surprised. "She's usually so cautious with new things." Carefully, Emma stepped closer, allowing Lily to extend her tiny hand toward Spirit's velvet muzzle. The moment they connected, a visible shiver ran through the horse's powerful body, and he released a breath that seemed almost like a sigh of relief. "My goodness," Linda whispered, witnessing the connection between horse and baby. "I haven't seen anything like this since Dad's horse with me," Sarah finished, her voice equally hushed. The similarity wasn't lost on her, the way Spirit's entire demeanor softened, how his usual restless energy stilled into a gentle, protective presence. Emma looked between them, curiosity evident in her expression. "What happened with your father's horse?" Sarah exchanged a glance with her mother before answering. "My father had this gelding named Thunder. Story goes that when I was just a few days old, my parents brought me out to the barn, and Thunder, who was normally pretty standoffish with everyone except my dad, went absolutely crazy trying to get near me. Dad thought it was strange enough that he finally brought me close, and Thunder just stood there completely still, watching over me." Linda nodded, her eyes misting with the memory. "Frank, Sarah's father, always said Thunder appointed himself Sarah's guardian that day. As she grew up, that horse would follow her everywhere, keeping watch. Once, when Sarah was about 4, she wandered off while we were busy with chores. We couldn't find her anywhere, and were about to call the sheriff when Thunder led us straight to her. She'd fallen asleep in the hayloft. Thunder saved my life another time too," Sarah added, her hand unconsciously moving to her pregnant belly. "I was 12, riding alone on the back trails, which I wasn't supposed to do, when a rattlesnake spooked him. Any other horse would have thrown me, but Thunder froze, refusing to move even when the snake struck at his leg. He got bit instead of me, and nearly died from it." Emma's eyes widened. "That's incredible. And you think Spirit is, what, feeling the same way about Lily?" "I don't know what to think," Sarah admitted, "but I've never seen him act this way with anyone else." As they spoke, Spirit remained focused entirely on Lily, his large, intelligent eyes tracking her every movement. When the baby let out a small hiccup, the horse's ears pricked forward immediately, his head tilting as if assessing whether she was in distress. "It's like he understands her," Emma said wonderingly, "like he knows she's fragile." Jake, who had been observing quietly, cleared his throat. "I've been around horses my whole life, and I've seen them develop attachments to people, but this is different. It's almost like he struggled to find the right word. "Chosen her," Sarah supplied. The phrase had been her father's way of describing Thunder's behavior, that the horse had somehow chosen her, recognized something in her that created an unbreakable bond. Emma stroked Lily's wispy hair, her expression thoughtful. "But why? We've never even been around horses before yesterday." No one had an answer for that. Instead, they stood in contemplative silence, watching as Spirit continued his gentle inspection of the baby, his breath ruffling her fine hair and eliciting a toothless smile that made Emma gasp softly. "She doesn't smile often," she explained at Sarah's questioning look. "The doctors say it's normal, that some babies just take longer, but I've been worried." "Well, she certainly approves of Spirit," Linda said cheerfully. "Maybe what she needed was a 1,000-pound friend." The joke broke the tension, and they all chuckled. Even Spirit seemed to relax further, lowering his head to rest it gently against the fence rail, maintaining his position near Lily but no longer quite so intensely focused. "Would you like to bring her into the paddock?" Sarah offered. "Spirit is perfectly safe, I promise. We could take a picture of them together, something for Lily's baby book." Emma hesitated, maternal protectiveness warring with the undeniable evidence of Spirit's gentle behavior. "You're sure it's safe?" "I'll be right beside you," Sarah assured her, "and Jake will hold Spirit's lead rope the whole time just to be extra careful." After another moment's consideration, Emma nodded. "Okay." but just for a minute. Jake opened the gate, leading Spirit back a few steps to give them room to enter. The horse remained calm but alert, his ears flicking between Jake's commands and Lily's small sounds. Once they were inside, Jake positioned Spirit carefully, making sure the horse was standing squarely and securely before allowing Sarah and Emma to approach with the baby. "Here we go," Sarah said encouragingly as Emma stepped forward, holding Lily securely against her chest. "Nice and easy." Spirit remained perfectly still as they approached, his only movement the gentle rise and fall of his breathing. When they were close enough, Emma carefully turned so that Lily was facing the horse directly. The baby's eyes widened with fascination at the huge creature before her. "She's not scared at all," Emma marveled. "Usually she cries with strangers." "I don't think Spirit counts as a stranger anymore," Sarah said with a smile. She pulled out her phone and snapped a few pictures of Lily and Spirit's gentle interaction. "These are going to be precious someday." After a few minutes, they exited the paddock and Jake returned Spirit to his grazing. The horse seemed reluctant to leave, looking back several times as if to ensure Lily was still safe. "Why don't we head back to the house?" Linda suggested. "I've got fresh lemonade and more of those cookies. We can sit and talk while Lily has some tummy time on the blanket." As they walked back, Sarah noticed Emma wincing slightly as she adjusted Lily in her arms. "Is your wrist bothering you?" she asked quietly, falling back a few steps from the others. Emma tensed immediately. "It's nothing, just sore from carrying her all the time." The deflection was practiced, almost reflexive, and Sarah recognized it for what it was. She'd volunteered at a women's shelter during college and had heard similar dismissals many times. Choosing her words carefully, she said, "If you ever need help with anything, Emma, anything at all, I hope you know you can ask. No questions, no judgments." Emma's step faltered briefly, her eyes darting to Sarah's face before quickly looking away. "Thank you," she said simply, but the words carried a weight that suggested she understood the offer's true meaning. They rejoined the others on the patio, where Linda had laid out a soft blanket for Lily and was already pouring lemonade. The baby seemed content, cooing softly as Emma placed her on her stomach on the blanket, surrounded by cushions to prevent rolling. "So, Emma," Linda began conversationally, "how long have you been in Riverbend?" "About a month now," Emma replied, settling into a chair with a barely suppressed sigh of relief. "We were in Austin before." "That's quite a change," Jake commented. "City to small town." Emma nodded. It was time for a fresh start. After Lily's father. She trailed off, then squared her shoulders. After he made it clear he wasn't interested in being a dad, staying there just didn't feel right anymore. The conversation flowed more easily after that, Emma gradually relaxing as they discussed neutral topics like the town's upcoming harvest festival and the best places to shop for baby clothes on a budget. Sarah noticed how Emma's eyes kept returning to Spirit, who had positioned himself at the paddock fence closest to the patio, still watching them. "He's not usually like this," Jake said, following her gaze. "Normally, once we're done training, he's happy to do his own thing." "It's really remarkable," Linda agreed, "almost like he's standing guard." Emma's face softened as she looked at the horse. "I've never had anyone stand guard for us before," she said quietly, almost to herself. Then, seeming to realize she'd spoken aloud, she quickly added, "I mean, it's sweet that he's so interested in Lily." Sarah caught her mother's eye, a silent communication passing between them. Whatever Emma's story was, it clearly involved more than just an absent father for Lily. The bruises, the wariness, the comment about never having someone stand guard, it all pointed to a situation far more complicated and potentially dangerous than Emma was letting on. As the afternoon light began to soften toward evening, Emma reluctantly gathered her things. "We should be going. I have an early shift tomorrow and Lily needs her bath routine." "Of course," Sarah said, rising to her feet with some effort. "But please come back anytime. Spirit would love to see Lily again, and so would we." Emma smiled, the first genuinely carefree expression they'd seen from her. "I'd like that. This has been really nice. Thank you." As they walked Emma to her car, Spirit whinnied loudly from the paddock, as if protesting their departure. Emma turned, lifting Lily slightly so the baby could see the horse one last time. "We'll be back, big guy," she called, surprising herself with the casualness of the interaction. Sarah helped Emma secure Lily in her car seat, noticing the second-hand quality of the safety equipment. Another sign of financial strain, but at least Emma was clearly prioritizing her baby's needs over her own. "Drive safe," Sarah said, stepping back as Emma started the car. "And remember what I said. If you need anything, call." Emma nodded, her expression grateful yet guarded. "Thank you, really, for everything today." As the car disappeared down the driveway, Linda placed a hand on Sarah's shoulder. "That girl's running from something, or someone. You saw it too, didn't you?" Sarah nodded grimly. The bruises, the nervousness, always checking her phone. "Yeah, I saw it." Jake joined them, his expression unusually serious. "You think she's in trouble?" "I don't know," Sarah admitted, "but I think Spirit does." Over the next 2 weeks, Emma and Lily became regular visitors to the ranch. The routine established itself naturally. Emma would arrive on her days off, Lily bundled securely in her carrier, and Spirit would immediately alert, his head lifting and ears pricking forward at the sound of their car on the gravel driveway. Each time, the horse's reaction was the same: intense focus, gentle curiosity, and what Sarah couldn't help but interpret as protective vigilance. For Emma, the ranch quickly became a sanctuary. Sarah noticed how the young mother's shoulders would visibly relax once she passed through the front gate, as if shedding a weight she carried everywhere else. During their visits, Emma gradually shared more details about her life, her childhood in a series of foster homes, her truncated community college education, her dreams of someday becoming a veterinary technician. About Lily's father, however, she remained vague, deflecting questions with practiced ease. All they knew was his name, Jason, and that he had made it clear he wanted no part of fatherhood. The subject of the bruises, which Sarah had noticed more than once, remained unaddressed, hovering in the background of their growing friendship, like a shadow neither wanted to acknowledge directly. On a particularly beautiful Saturday in late September, Sarah sat on the porch swing, watching as Emma walked Lily around the paddock where Spirit grazed. The horse followed them along the fence line, occasionally nickering softly when Lily made a sound. "They've gotten quite comfortable with each other," Linda observed, emerging from the house with 2 glasses of iced tea. She handed one to Sarah before settling into a rocking chair. "Emma seems happier too." Sarah nodded, accepting the drink gratefully. "She's opening up more. Did you know she's taking online classes, trying to get her associate's degree while working full-time and raising Lily on her own?" "That girl's got grit," Linda said approvingly. "Reminds me a bit of you." Sarah smiled, watching as Emma paused to let Spirit sniff Lily's outstretched hand. "Maybe that's why I feel so drawn to helping her. That, and—" She trailed off, her hand resting on her rounded belly. "And you're about to be a mother yourself," Linda finished. "Nothing makes us more aware of others' struggles than facing similar challenges." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the only sounds the distant laughter of Emma as she talked to Lily and Spirit, and the occasional whinny from the horse. "Have you noticed how Spirit acts when they're here?" Sarah asked. "It's like he's on alert, but not in a stressed way. More like he's keeping watch." Linda nodded thoughtfully. "Your father would have had a theory about that. The old souls thing?" Sarah smiled, remembering her father's belief that certain horses and humans recognized each other across lifetimes. He always said horses could sense things we couldn't: danger, illness, connections between people. Linda's gaze drifted to the paddock. Maybe Spirit senses something about Emma and Lily that we're missing. Before Sarah could respond, the sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention. A sleek black pickup truck was making its way up the driveway, dust billowing behind it. As it drew closer, Sarah didn't recognize it as belonging to any of their regular visitors or neighbors. In the paddock, Spirit's head shot up, his body tense and alert. Emma, noticing the horse's sudden change in demeanor, turned to look at the approaching vehicle. Even from a distance, Sarah could see how she instantly stiffened, clutching Lily closer to her chest. "Mom," Sarah said quietly, her instincts prickling with warning. "I think that's him." Linda understood immediately. "Jason?" Sarah nodded, already pushing herself up from the swing with some difficulty. The way Emma's reacting, and look at Spirit. The horse was now pacing anxiously along the fence, his ears pinned back in a clear display of agitation, occasionally tossing his head and snorting loudly. The truck pulled to a stop in front of the house, and a man emerged, tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair cut short, and an expression that might have been handsome if not for the coldness in his eyes. He scanned the property with the calculated gaze of someone taking inventory. "Can I help you?" Linda called out, her voice pleasant but firm as she stepped off the porch. The man's attention snapped to her. "I'm looking for Emma Walsh," he said, his tone casual but underlined with an edge that raised Sarah's hackles. "I was told she might be here." "And you are?" Linda asked, folding her arms across her chest. "Jason Reeves. I'm Lily's father." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Just want to check on my girls." Sarah had reached the bottom of the porch steps now and positioned herself beside her mother. "How did you find this place?" she asked, keeping her voice level despite the alarm bells ringing in her mind. Jason shrugged. "Small town. People talk. Someone at the diner mentioned Emma brings the baby out here sometimes." His gaze shifted past them, and his expression hardened. "There she is." Emma was hurrying back from the paddock, her face pale but determined. Lily was secured tightly against her chest, the baby unusually quiet, as if sensing the tension. "Jason," Emma said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what are you doing here?" "Is that any way to greet me?" he replied, taking a step toward her. "I've been looking everywhere for you. You can't just take my daughter and disappear." Emma flinched at his words but stood her ground. "You said you wanted nothing to do with us. You made that very clear." "I changed my mind," Jason said, his tone softening into something that sounded rehearsed. "I miss you, both of you. I want us to be a family." Sarah didn't miss how Emma's hands trembled slightly, or how she unconsciously angled her body to shield Lily from Jason's view. From the paddock, Spirit let out a loud, angry whinny, drawing everyone's attention. The horse was rearing slightly, pawing at the air with his front hooves, his eyes fixed on Jason with unmistakable hostility. Jason frowned. "What's wrong with that horse?" "He doesn't like strangers," Sarah said smoothly, stepping closer to Emma in a subtle show of support. "Especially unexpected ones." Linda joined them, creating a protective barrier between Emma and Jason. "Why don't we all go inside and talk? It's getting chilly out here." Jason hesitated, his gaze flicking between the three women and the agitated horse. "Sure," he finally said, his easy agreement belied by the tension in his jaw. "We've got a lot to catch up on." As they moved toward the house, Sarah positioned herself slightly behind Emma, close enough to whisper, "You don't have to talk to him if you don't want to. Say the word, and we'll ask him to leave." Emma's reply was barely audible. "He'll just come back, and next time I might be alone." The fear in those simple words confirmed what Sarah had suspected. Whatever their history, Jason was not someone Emma had left willingly or on good terms. Inside, Linda busied herself making coffee, while Sarah guided Emma to the sofa, deliberately sitting beside her. Jason took a chair across from them, his posture deceptively relaxed. "So," he began, his eyes fixed on Lily, who was now fussing quietly against Emma's shoulder. "How's my little girl doing?" "She's fine," Emma replied, her voice steadier than Sarah would have expected. "She's healthy. The doctors are pleased with her progress." "Doctors?" Jason's eyebrows rose. "What doctors? Is something wrong with her?" Emma hesitated, then said, "She has a heart murmur. It's being monitored. Nothing serious." Jason's expression hardened slightly. "And you didn't think her father should know about this?" "You made it clear you didn't want to be her father," Emma said, a hint of defiance entering her voice. "You told me to take care of it when I told you I was pregnant." The air in the room grew tense, Jason's affable facade slipping for just a moment before he regained control. "I was scared, Emma. Young. Stupid. I've changed." Outside, Spirit's continued whinnies could be heard, along with the sound of hooves striking against the wooden fence. The horse's distress seemed to be escalating, not diminishing. "Your horse sounds upset," Jason commented, a note of irritation creeping into his voice. "He's very sensitive to atmosphere," Sarah said pointedly. "Picks up on tension, negative energy, that sort of thing." Jason's eyes narrowed slightly at the implication, but before he could respond, Linda returned with a tray of coffee and cookies, setting it on the coffee table with deliberate calmness. "So, Jason," she said conversationally as she poured coffee, "what brings you all the way from Austin to our little town? Emma mentioned you had a good job there." The question was innocent enough, but Sarah recognized her mother's strategy, gathering information while maintaining a neutral facade. "Like I said, I want my family back," Jason replied, accepting a cup with a tight smile. "I've got a better job now, more stability. I can provide for them." He looked at Emma. "You don't have to work in that diner anymore. You can come home." The word home seemed to trigger something in Emma, who suddenly stood, adjusting Lily in her arms. "Excuse me," she murmured. "Lily needs changing." As she hurried toward the bathroom, Jason watched her go, his expression unreadable. Once she was out of earshot, he turned to Sarah and Linda, his smile shifting into something colder. "Emma's always been emotional," he said with a dismissive wave of his hand. "Overreacts to everything. I'm sure she's told you all sorts of stories about me." "Actually," Sarah replied evenly, "she's hardly mentioned you at all." Jason's smile faltered at Sarah's response. He shifted in his seat, his posture becoming more rigid. "That's so? Well, I guess she wouldn't have much to say. We were together for almost 2 years before she disappeared, came home one day, and she was just gone." "Seems like an extreme reaction for someone with nothing to run from," Linda observed mildly, stirring her coffee with deliberate slowness. Jason's eyes flashed with something dangerous before he regained his composure. "Like I said, she overreacts. Probably got scared about the baby, the responsibility. I admit I wasn't thrilled at first. Who would be? We were both building careers. But I've had time to think, and I want to make it right." Outside, Spirit's distress had escalated. The sound of his hooves striking against the fence posts had become more frequent, his whinnies more urgent. Jake's voice could be heard trying to calm the horse, but with little success. "Your horse seems pretty worked up," Jason remarked, glancing toward the window with evident irritation. "Maybe someone should check on him before he hurts himself." "Jake's with him," Sarah replied, not taking her eyes off Jason. "He'll be fine. Spirit's very intuitive about people, very protective of those he cares about." The implied message wasn't lost on Jason, whose jaw tightened slightly. A horse can't be protective. They're animals, not people. You'd be surprised what horses understand, Linda said, especially about danger. The bathroom door opened, and Emma emerged with Lily, her face composed but pale. Sarah noticed how she'd used the brief absence to collect herself, straightening her shoulders and lifting her chin in a show of strength that seemed practiced. "So," Jason said, turning his attention back to Emma as she sat down beside Sarah. "When are you coming home? I've got a place all set up for us. Nicer than that apartment you're in now, I bet." Emma tensed. "How do you know where I live?" Jason waved dismissively. "Like I said, small town. Asked around a bit." His smile was meant to be charming but came across as predatory. "I've missed you, Em. Missed both of you." "You've never even met Lily," Emma pointed out, her voice quiet but steady. "Whose fault is that?" Jason countered, a harder edge entering his tone. "You took off without a word, didn't even give me a chance." "A chance to do what?" Emma asked, her grip on Lily tightening slightly. "Tell me again how a baby would ruin everything, or maybe throw another lamp at the wall to make your point." The accusation hung in the air, heavy and damning. Jason's face darkened momentarily before he forced a laugh. "Come on, Em. It was one fight. I was upset. You know I'd never hurt you or the baby." Sarah and Linda exchanged glances, communicating silently. The familiar pattern of abuse and denial was playing out before them. Jason minimizing his actions, Emma's fear evident despite her brave front. Before anyone could respond, the back door opened and Jake entered, his expression grim. "Sorry to interrupt, but Sarah, we might have a problem with Spirit. He's worked himself into a state I've never seen before. Broke through part of the fence already." As if on cue, a loud crash came from outside, followed by the unmistakable sound of splintering wood. Jake winced. That would be the rest of it. Jason stood abruptly. "What the hell kind of place is this? Can't even control your animals?" "Spirit's never acted like this before," Sarah said, rising with some difficulty to follow Jake. "Not until today." The accusation was clear in her tone, and Jason's expression darkened further. "Are you suggesting—" A piercing whinny interrupted him, followed by the thunderous sound of hooves approaching the house. Through the window they could see Spirit galloping toward them, his powerful body moving with determined purpose, his eyes wild. "Jesus Christ," Jason muttered, taking an involuntary step back. "He's coming straight for the house," Jake warned. "I couldn't stop him." Emma had risen too, clutching Lily protectively. The baby, who had been relatively quiet until now, began to fuss, her tiny face scrunching up as she sensed the tension around her. Spirit reached the porch and stopped, pawing at the ground aggressively, his head tossing as he let out another loud whinny. His eyes were fixed on the front door, as if he knew exactly who was inside. "That horse has lost its mind," Jason said, his voice rising. "Someone needs to control it before it hurts someone." As if responding to his words, Lily began to cry. Not the usual fussing of an infant, but a distressed wail that seemed to pierce the very walls of the house. Spirit's reaction was immediate and startling. The horse reared up, pawing at the air with his front hooves before landing heavily and charging directly at one of the front windows. "Get down!" Jake shouted, just as Spirit crashed through the glass, sending shards flying across the living room. The chaos that followed was a blur of motion and sound. Linda grabbed Emma and Lily, pulling them toward the kitchen in safety. Jake lunged for Spirit's halter, trying to gain control of the frenzied animal. Sarah positioned herself between Jason and the others, her maternal instincts overriding any concern for her own safety. Jason, his face contorted with rage, backed toward the front door. "You're all insane. That horse should be put down." Spirit, bleeding from several cuts where the glass had sliced his hide, focused entirely on Jason. The horse's nostrils flared, his teeth bared in a display rarely seen outside of stallion fights. Despite Jake's efforts to restrain him, Spirit advanced on Jason, driving him further toward the door. "Get out!" Sarah shouted at Jason. "Now!" For a moment, it seemed like Jason might argue, but another aggressive move from Spirit decided the matter. He yanked open the door and backed onto the porch. "This isn't over," he snarled. "Emma and Lily are coming with me one way or another. They're my family." "They're not your property," Sarah retorted, advancing despite her pregnant state. "And they're not going anywhere they don't want to go." Jason's face twisted with malice. "We'll see about that," he spat before turning and striding quickly to his truck. Only when the vehicle had roared away, spraying gravel in its wake, did Spirit begin to calm. The horse was breathing heavily, blood trickling from cuts on his chest and neck, but his eyes remained fixed on the retreating truck until it disappeared from view. "What just happened?" Linda asked shakily, emerging from the kitchen with Emma and Lily. Jake had managed to get a lead rope attached to Spirit's halter and was examining the horse's injuries. "I've never seen anything like it," he said, his voice filled with disbelief. "It's like he knew, like he was trying to protect you all." Emma approached Spirit cautiously, Lily still clutched against her chest. The baby's cries had subsided to hiccuping sobs, and as they drew near, Spirit lowered his head, his entire demeanor shifting from aggressive defender to gentle friend in an instant. "He was," Emma whispered, reaching out tentatively to touch Spirit's muzzle. "Protecting us. From Jason." Sarah came to stand beside her, placing a supportive arm around the younger woman's shoulders. "Emma, I think it's time you told us everything about Jason. This isn't just about an ex-boyfriend trying to reconcile. What we just saw..." She gestured to the broken window, the glass scattered across the floor, and Spirit's bleeding wounds. This was something else entirely. Emma's eyes filled with tears as she looked from Spirit to Sarah and back again. "I didn't think anyone would believe me," she said, her voice breaking. "About what he did, what he's capable of." "We believe you," Linda said firmly, joining them. "Every word." Jake had begun to lead Spirit carefully back toward the door. "Let me get him cleaned up and treated. Then we need to call the sheriff about that window at minimum." Emma paled. "The police? No, please. If Jason finds out I've talked to the authorities..." "Emma," Sarah interrupted gently. "After what just happened, do you really think we're going to let you face him alone? Whatever you're afraid of, whatever he's done or threatened to do, you don't have to handle it by yourself anymore." As if to emphasize the point, Spirit let out a soft nicker, stretching his neck to touch his nose gently to Lily's tiny foot. The baby, remarkably calm now despite the chaos, reached out a small hand toward the horse in return. The simple gesture, full of trust and connection, seemed to break something inside Emma. Her shoulders slumped as the weight of her secrets became too heavy to bear alone. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll tell you everything." After treating Spirit's wounds, fortunately superficial despite the dramatic entry through the window, they gathered at the kitchen table. Jake had rigged up a temporary covering for the broken window, while Linda prepared a fresh pot of coffee and set out sandwiches that no one seemed particularly interested in eating. Lily had finally fallen asleep in a makeshift bassinet created from a laundry basket lined with soft blankets, her tiny face peaceful despite the tension surrounding her. Emma sat with her hands wrapped around a mug of coffee, her knuckles white from the tight grip. Her eyes were fixed on the dark liquid as if it might contain answers to questions she'd been avoiding for too long. "I met Jason 3 years ago," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "I was waiting tables at a restaurant in Austin, trying to save enough for community college. He came in with some business associates. He was in real estate development, always talking about his big deals and important connections." She paused, a bitter smile touching her lips. He was charming. Left me $100 tip on a $50 meal and his business card with a note saying I had the most beautiful smile he'd ever seen. Sarah nodded encouragingly but remained silent, not wanting to interrupt now that Emma had finally started talking. The first 6 months were perfect. He took me to nice restaurants, bought me clothes, helped me get a better apartment. When I told him I wanted to study veterinary technology, he said he'd help pay for my classes. Emma's voice strengthened slightly as she recalled the early days. I thought I'd hit the jackpot. A successful, handsome man who seemed to adore me and supported my dreams. When did things change? Linda asked gently. Emma's gaze dropped back to her coffee. So gradually I barely noticed at first. He'd make little comments about my clothes, suggesting they were too revealing or not nice enough. He'd check my phone saying he was just curious who'd texted me. He'd show up unexpectedly at my work or school, claiming he was in the neighborhood and wanted to surprise me. She took a shaky breath. The first time he actually hurt me was about a year in. I'd gone out with some classmates to celebrate finishing a tough exam. I didn't realize how late it had gotten, and my phone battery died. When I got home, he was waiting in my apartment. He had a key by then. He accused me of cheating, said I was lying about where I'd been. When I tried to leave the room, he grabbed my arm so hard it bruised. Sarah exchanged a glance with her mother, both of them recognizing the familiar pattern Emma was describing. He apologized the next day, Emma continued, sent flowers, cried, promised it would never happen again, and I believed him. She laughed hollowly. Classic, right? The story every abused woman tells. He was sorry. He didn't mean it. It won't happen again. Except it always does. It's not your fault, Emma, Sarah said firmly. Abusers are manipulators. They're experts at making you doubt yourself. Emma nodded, wiping away a tear. After that first time, it was like a dam broke. The incidents got more frequent, more violent. He'd shove me, slap me, throw things, always followed by apologies, gifts, promises, and I kept believing him, kept thinking I could somehow fix things, fix him. What about when you got pregnant? Jake asked, his usually jovial face solemn. That was the worst, Emma admitted, her voice breaking. I was on birth control, but I got sick 1 month, had to take antibiotics. I didn't know they could interfere with the pill. She wrapped her arms around herself as if cold. When I told Jason I was pregnant, he completely lost it. Said I'd trapped him, that I'd done it on purpose. He kicked over the coffee table, threw a lamp at the wall. When I tried to leave, he grabbed me, shook me so hard I thought. She trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. You thought he might kill you, Linda supplied quietly. Or the baby. Emma nodded, tears now flowing freely. I managed to get away, locked myself in the bathroom. He pounded on the door for hours, alternating between threats and apologies. Eventually, he left. When I came out the next morning, there was a check on the kitchen counter, a lot of money, with a note saying to take care of it. He meant an abortion. But you decided to keep the baby, Sarah said. I was scared, confused. But yes, I wanted my baby. Emma's hand moved protectively toward the sleeping Lily. I went to stay with a former foster mom for a few days to think. When I came back to get some of my things, Jason was waiting. He'd calmed down, said he'd accept whatever decision I made. I told him I was keeping the baby. Emma's expression darkened. He seemed to accept it at first, even started talking about names, nursery colors. But something was off. He'd watch me with this calculating look, ask strange questions about my prenatal appointments. One night I overheard him on the phone with someone talking about how the problem would be handled soon. The kitchen fell silent. the implication hanging heavy in the air. I left that night, Emma continued, packed what I could carry and went to a women's shelter. They helped me get a restraining order, but I knew it wouldn't stop him for long. When Lily was born with the heart condition, the shelter connected me with a program that helps relocate families in danger. They suggested Riverbend because of the children's hospital in the next county and helped me find the apartment and the job at the diner. And now he's found you, Jake said grimly. Emma nodded, looking exhausted by the recounting of her story. I knew he would eventually. I just hoped we'd have more time, that maybe he'd have moved on. Sarah reached across the table, taking Emma's hand in hers. What do you want to do now? We can help you relocate again if that's what you feel is safest. Emma's gaze drifted to the window where, even with the temporary covering, they could see Spirit standing vigilant, refusing to return to his paddock despite his injuries. I'm tired of running, she said finally. Tired of being afraid. But I don't know how to stop him. The restraining order was only for Austin, and even there it didn't seem to matter to him. We should start by reporting today's incident, Linda suggested. Sheriff Davis is a good man. He'll take this seriously. Emma hesitated. Jason's careful. He never leaves evidence, always makes sure there are no witnesses. It would be my word against his, and he's convincing, charming when he wants to be. He smashed through our living room window with his truck on the way out, Jake pointed out. That's property damage at minimum, and we all witnessed his threats. And there's Spirit, Sarah added thoughtfully. I know it sounds crazy, but that horse reacted to Jason in a way I've never seen before. It's like he knew exactly who and what Jason was. As if hearing his name, Spirit nickered softly from outside. Lily stirred in her makeshift bed, making small snuffling sounds before settling back to sleep. I still don't understand that, Emma said, looking toward where her daughter slept. Why Spirit is so connected to Lily, to us. Sarah exchanged a glance with her mother before responding. My dad used to talk about how horses could sense things humans couldn't. Danger, illness, connections between souls. I never fully believed it until now, but Spirit's behavior is too specific, too intentional to dismiss. Emma was quiet for a moment, considering. When I was little, bouncing between foster homes, I used to have this recurring dream about a horse, a big chestnut horse that would stand guard while I slept, keeping me safe. She smiled sadly. Childish fantasy, I guess. An imaginary protector because I didn't have a real one. Linda's eyes widened slightly. Chestnut, like Spirit? Emma nodded. Same color. I remember it clearly because the dream was so vivid, so comforting. I'd almost forgotten about it until... She trailed off, shaking her head. It sounds ridiculous. Maybe not, Sarah said quietly. Maybe some connections go deeper than we understand. A soft cry from Lily interrupted the conversation. Emma rose immediately, but before she could reach the bassinet, Spirit's whinny came through loud and clear, as if responding directly to the baby's call. Emma froze, looking toward the window where Spirit stood at attention, ears pricked forward, eyes fixed on the house. He heard her, she whispered. From outside, through the walls, he heard her cry. Just like at the rodeo, Sarah confirmed, when he stopped mid-run. Emma moved to lift Lily, cradling her close as the baby's cries subsided to soft hiccups. What do we do now? She asked, looking around at the faces that had become more familiar to her in the past few weeks than any others in her life. Sarah met her mother's eyes, then Jake's, before answering with firm resolve. We keep you safe, both of you, and we start by making sure Jason understands that you're not alone anymore. Sheriff Davis arrived an hour later, his weathered face serious as he surveyed the broken window and took statements from everyone present. He was a tall man with silver-streaked hair and the careful demeanor of someone who'd seen too much in his 30 years of law enforcement to dismiss any threat as trivial. So this Jason fellow drove all the way from Austin to find Ms. Walsh, made verbal threats, and then damaged your property on his way out, he summarized, closing his notepad. His gaze shifted to Spirit, who remained stationed near the house despite Jake's attempts to lead him back to the stable for treatment. And you're saying the horse crashed through the window trying to get to him? I know how it sounds, Sarah acknowledged. But yes, that's exactly what happened. Spirit has never shown aggression toward anyone before today. Sheriff Davis nodded thoughtfully. I've been around horses my whole life, Mrs. Miller. They're better judges of character than most people I know. He turned to Emma, his expression softening slightly. Ms. Walsh, do you have documentation of the restraining order from Austin? Emma nodded. In my apartment. I keep copies of everything in a lockbox. Good. I'll need to see those. In the meantime, I'll put out an alert for Mr. Reeves's vehicle and have deputies drive by your place regularly. He hesitated before adding, but I have to be honest with you. If he hasn't violated the terms of the order in our jurisdiction yet, our options are limited. He threatened to take Emma and Lily one way or another, Sarah pointed out. Isn't that enough? The sheriff sighed. It helps, but without witnesses outside your immediate circle or some clear evidence. He trailed off apologetically. I'll do everything I can within the law, but these situations are always complicated. After the sheriff left, promising to send a deputy to check on Emma's apartment, a heavy silence fell over the kitchen. Lily had awakened and was now nursing quietly beneath a light blanket, Emma's face a mixture of love for her daughter and fear for their future. You're staying here tonight, Linda announced, breaking the silence. Both of you. The guest room is already made up. Emma started to protest, but Sarah cut her off gently. It's not just for your safety, Emma. Look at Spirit. She gestured toward the window where the horse remained standing guard. We'd have to sedate him to get him back to the stable at this point, and with his injuries, that's not ideal. He'll settle once he knows you and Lily are safe here. Jake nodded in agreement. I can bring your overnight things from your apartment. Just tell me what you need. Emma's eyes filled with tears. Why are you all doing this? You barely know us. Linda moved to place a gentle hand on Emma's shoulder. Because it's the right thing to do. And because we've grown fond of you both, whether you realize it or not. Besides, Sarah added with a small smile, I think Spirit made the decision for all of us the moment he stopped that run to look at you and Lily. Whatever connection exists there, it matters. After some discussion, they formulated a plan. Jake would go to Emma's apartment with the sheriff's deputy to collect essential items for her and Lily. Sarah called their family lawyer to discuss extending the restraining order to their current jurisdiction. Linda began preparing the guest room, adding a portable crib they'd purchased for Sarah's upcoming baby. Throughout all this, Spirit remained at his self-appointed post, moving only to follow the sun's path as it began to set, keeping his vigil from the spot with the best view of the driveway. His behavior was so unusual, so purposeful, that even Jake, who had initially been the most skeptical about any special connection, admitted there was something extraordinary happening. It's like he's appointed himself their personal bodyguard, he remarked as he prepared to leave for Emma's apartment. I've worked with horses my whole life, and I've never seen anything like it. By nightfall, Emma and Lily were settled in the guest room, the portable crib positioned beside the bed. Despite the comfortable accommodations, Emma found sleep elusive, starting at every sound, checking and rechecking the locked windows and door. Around midnight, she gave up and moved to the window seat, Lily cradled against her chest. From there, she could see Spirit, still standing in the yard, his light coat almost glowing in the moonlight. The horse's head was up, ears forward, alert despite the late hour. As if sensing her gaze, Spirit turned to look directly at the window where she sat and nickered softly. A gentle knock at the door startled her. "Emma, it's Sarah. Are you awake?" Emma crossed the room and opened the door to find Sarah in a robe, her pregnant belly prominent, a mug of tea in each hand. "I saw the light under your door," Sarah explained. "Thought you might like some company." Grateful for the distraction from her thoughts, Emma accepted the tea and returned to the window seat, making room for Sarah to join her. For a few minutes, they sat in comfortable silence, watching Spirit's silent vigil. "He hasn't moved," Emma observed finally. "Shouldn't he be resting, especially with his injuries?" Sarah smiled faintly. "Horses are prey animals by nature. In a herd, there's always at least one standing guard while the others rest. I think Spirit sees you and Lily as his herd now." Emma considered this, her gaze moving from the vigilant horse to her sleeping daughter. "I still don't understand why. What makes us so special to him?" Sarah was quiet for a moment, choosing her words carefully. "My dad used to talk about souls recognizing each other across lifetimes. It sounded like mystical nonsense to me until—" She gestured toward Spirit. "Until I saw how Thunder was with me, and now how Spirit is with Lily." "You think Spirit and Lily knew each other before, in another life?" The skepticism in Emma's voice was tempered by wonder. "I think there are connections in this world we can't fully explain," Sarah replied, "and I think whatever bond Spirit feels with Lily and with you is powerful enough that he's willing to crash through a window to protect you both." Emma brushed away a tear. "No one's ever protected me before, not like that." "Well, get used to it," Sarah said firmly, "because it's not just Spirit anymore. You've got all of us now." The conversation shifted to lighter topics: Sarah's plans for the nursery, Emma's dreams of finishing her veterinary technician studies, Lily's latest milestones. As they talked, Emma felt some of the tension easing from her shoulders, replaced by a cautious hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. Around dawn, as the first light began to streak the sky, they heard the sound of hooves on gravel. Looking out, they saw Spirit finally moving away from his post, walking slowly toward the stable where Jake had left fresh water and feed hours earlier. "See?" Sarah said with a smile. "The night shift is over. He knows the danger is past, at least for now." Emma watched the horse disappear into the stable, his duty fulfilled for the moment. "I wish I could be as certain." "Jason won't give up easily," Sarah acknowledged. "Men like him rarely do, but neither will we." She squeezed Emma's hand. "Get some rest while you can. We have calls to make later. The lawyer, the sheriff, the women's advocacy center in town. We're going to build a wall of protection around you and Lily that Jason can't break through." As Sarah left her to rest, Emma settled back into bed, drawing Lily's crib closer. Despite her exhaustion, her mind was racing with possibilities, not just fears of what Jason might do, but also tentative hopes for a future she'd stopped believing was possible. A future where she and Lily weren't alone and running, but surrounded by people who cared, protected by both human and equine guardians. Outside, as the sun rose fully over the horizon, Spirit emerged from the stable, apparently having taken only the minimum rest needed. He walked deliberately back to his post near the house, resuming his vigilant stance with the patience of a sentinel who understood that the battle was far from over. Inside, Emma finally drifted to sleep, one hand resting protectively on Lily's crib, the other clutching the small stuffed horse Jake had brought from her apartment, a childhood keepsake that, in the light of recent events, seemed less like coincidence and more like foreshadowing of the extraordinary bond that now might save them both. Over the next week, Emma and Lily settled into life at the Miller Ranch. What had begun as a temporary safety measure evolved into something that felt increasingly permanent. and right. Emma moved from the guest room to the ranch's small caretaker's cottage, a cozy structure with 2 bedrooms and a front porch that faced the paddock where Spirit spent his days. The arrangement gave Emma independence while keeping her and Lily within the protective sphere of the Miller family. The legal wheels had begun turning as well. Sarah's lawyer had filed for an extension of the restraining order to cover their current jurisdiction. Sheriff Davis increased patrols past the ranch entrance and stationed a deputy near Emma's apartment building, where Jason had been spotted twice, attempting to gain information about her whereabouts from neighbors. "He's not giving up," Emma said quietly one morning as she and Sarah sat on the cottage porch, watching Spirit graze nearby. Lily was asleep in her carrier, her tiny chest rising and falling with peaceful breaths. "The sheriff called last night. Jason's been asking questions at the diner, trying to find out where I'm staying." Sarah's expression darkened. "Did they tell him anything?" "No, thankfully. Marge, my boss, told him I'd quit without notice." Emma managed a small smile. "She actually kept my job open, said I can come back whenever I feel safe." "That's one thing about small towns," Sarah said. "People look out for each other." Emma nodded, her gaze returning to Spirit, who had lifted his head and was staring intently toward the main road, ears pricked forward. "What do you think he's hearing?" Sarah frowned, straining to listen. The distant sound of an engine reached them, growing steadily louder. Probably just a delivery truck. But Spirit's behavior suggested otherwise. The horse had begun pacing along the fence line, his movements agitated, his tail swishing nervously. When a black pickup appeared at the end of the long driveway, Spirit let out a warning whinny that sent chills down both women's spines. "It's him," Emma whispered, her face draining of color. "That's Jason's truck." Sarah was already on her feet, one hand pulling out her phone, the other reaching for Emma's arm. "Inside now. I'm calling the sheriff." They hurried into the cottage, Sarah locking the door behind them while dialing. Emma moved to the window, carefully peering out from behind the curtain. The truck had stopped at the closed gate that marked the entrance to the ranch property, but the engine was still running. "Sheriff, it's Sarah Miller. Jason Reeves is at our front gate right now." She paused, listening. "Yes, Emma and Lily are with me in the caretaker's cottage. We're locked in." Another pause. "Thank you. Please hurry." Emma watched as the driver's door of the truck opened and Jason stepped out. Even from this distance, she could see the rigid set of his shoulders, the purposeful way he moved toward the gate. "The sheriff's sending deputies, but it'll take at least 15 minutes, Sarah said, joining Emma at the window. "Jake and Mom are in town, so it's just us right now." Outside, Spirit's agitation had reached new levels. The horse was running back and forth along the fence line closest to the gate, occasionally rearing up on his hind legs, his whinnies growing more frantic. Jason had reached the gate now and was examining the heavy chain and padlock securing it. For a moment it seemed he might turn back, but then he began to climb, swinging one leg over the top bar. "He's coming in," Emma gasped, instinctively moving to where Lily slept, positioning herself between the baby and the door. Sarah's expression hardened with determination. "I'm calling Jake. If we can just stall Jason until help arrives." Her words were cut short by the sound of splintering wood. Through the window they could see that Spirit had broken through the paddock fence and was galloping full tilt toward the gate where Jason was now dropping to the ground on the inside of the property. "Oh my God," Emma breathed, watching as the massive horse bore down on Jason, who had only just noticed the imminent danger. Jason froze for a split second before diving to the side, barely avoiding Spirit's first charge. The horse wheeled around with surprising agility, positioning himself between Jason and the path to the cottage, his intention unmistakable. "He's protecting us," Sarah said, her voice filled with awe despite the danger of the situation. "He's keeping Jason away from the cottage." Outside, Jason had retreated several steps, clearly unnerved by the horse's aggressive behavior. He shouted something they couldn't hear, gesturing angrily toward the cottage. Spirit responded by pawing the ground and advancing slowly, forcing Jason further back toward the gate. For a tense minute, it seemed like a standoff. Jason unwilling to retreat completely, Spirit refusing to let him advance. Then Jason reached into his jacket and pulled out something that made Emma's blood run cold. "He has a gun," she whispered, horror washing over her. "Sarah, he has a gun." Sarah was already dialing the sheriff again, her voice urgent as she reported the escalation. Emma could only watch, paralyzed with fear, as Jason pointed the weapon at Spirit, his intention clear. "No!" Emma screamed, forgetting all caution as she flung open the cottage door. "Jason, don't!" Her sudden appearance momentarily diverted Jason's attention, and in that crucial second, Spirit charged again. This time, Jason wasn't quick enough. The horse's powerful shoulders slammed into him, sending both the man and his weapon flying in different directions. Jason landed hard on his back, the air knocked from his lungs, while the gun skittered across the gravel and disappeared into the tall grass beside the driveway. Spirit positioned himself between the fallen man and the cottage, standing guard with his head lowered threateningly, ready to charge again if necessary. Jason struggled to his feet, clearly winded and shaken, his face contorted with rage. "This isn't over," he shouted, his voice carrying clearly across the distance. "That crazy horse won't always be around, Emma. You and Lily belong with me." The sound of sirens approaching finally broke the standoff. Jason, realizing his position was untenable, backed toward the gate, keeping a wary eye on Spirit, who followed his every move with predatory focus. By the time Sheriff Davis's patrol car came into view, Jason had already made it back to his truck and was speeding away, leaving a cloud of dust in his wake. Two deputies immediately gave chase, while the sheriff himself pulled up to the cottage where Emma stood trembling on the porch, Sarah beside her with a protective arm around her shoulders. "Are you both all right?" Sheriff Davis asked, his experienced eyes already scanning the area for signs of danger. "We're fine," Sarah assured him. "Thanks to Spirit." As if on cue, the horse trotted up to the cottage, his earlier aggression completely gone, replaced by the gentle demeanor they had come to associate with his presence around Emma and Lily. He nickered softly, pushing his nose against Emma's outstretched hand. "He saved us," Emma said, tears streaming down her face as she stroked Spirit's velvet muzzle. "He knew Jason was coming before we even heard the truck." Sheriff Davis's radio crackled with the voices of his deputies, reporting that they were in pursuit of Jason's vehicle heading south on the county road. He acknowledged the update before turning back to the women. "We'll get him this time," he promised. "Breaking and entering, brandishing a firearm, violating a restraining order. That's enough to hold him while we dig deeper into his background." He nodded toward Spirit, who was now standing calmly beside Emma. "Might want to add assault by horse to the charges." Despite the gravity of the situation, Emma found herself laughing through her tears, the release of tension almost overwhelming. Lily began to cry from inside the cottage, and Spirit's ears immediately pricked forward at the sound. Without hesitation, Emma turned and went inside, returning moments later with Lily cradled against her shoulder. As she stepped back onto the porch, Spirit stretched his neck toward the baby, his nostrils flaring gently as he took in her scent. Lily's cries subsided almost immediately, replaced by curious coos as she reached her tiny hand toward the horse's muzzle. Sheriff Davis watched the interaction with undisguised amazement. "I've been around horses all my life," he said, shaking his head slowly, "but I've never seen anything like this." "Neither had we," Sarah replied, until Spirit stopped mid-run at the rodeo after hearing Lily cry. "It's like they have some kind of connection we can't explain." Emma looked from Spirit to Lily and back again, a sense of wonder replacing the fear that had gripped her moments before. "I think they do," she said softly. "And today, that connection might have saved our lives." 3 months later, the Miller Ranch was transformed by the sound of a newborn's cries, joining Lily's babbling. Sarah had given birth to a healthy baby boy they named Frank, after her father. The autumn air was crisp with the promise of winter as Emma walked across the yard, Lily balanced on her hip, heading toward the main house where Sarah was settling into motherhood with the same determination she'd shown in the rodeo arena. Jason remained in custody, his bail denied after evidence surfaced linking him to previous incidents of stalking and violence against other women. Emma's testimony, combined with the discovery of detailed plans on his phone for abducting Lily, had ensured that the charges against him were substantial. The prosecutor had assured Emma that Jason would likely be imprisoned for years, not months. "There's something healing about having a baby in the house again," Linda commented as Emma entered the warm kitchen. She was stirring a pot of soup while Sarah sat at the table, nursing little Frank with practiced ease despite being a new mother. "2 babies," Emma corrected with a smile, setting Lily down on the blanket that had become her permanent spot in the Miller's kitchen. At 8 months old, Lily was already pulling herself up on furniture, determined to stand. Her heart condition, though still requiring monitoring, had improved dramatically, much to her doctor's surprise. "How was Spirit this morning?" Sarah asked, adjusting Frank against her shoulder for burping. Emma's smile widened. "The same as always. Waiting by the cottage door when we woke up, following us around the yard during Lily's tummy time. Jake says he's never seen a horse so consistently attentive to a human before." The bond between Spirit and Lily had only strengthened over the passing months. The horse had appointed himself her guardian, maintaining a watchful presence whenever she was outside. Even more remarkably, he seemed to anticipate her needs, moving to create shade when the sun was too bright, alerting the adults with a distinctive nicker when she was about to attempt something potentially dangerous in her increasing mobility. "Jake's been doing some research," Sarah said, her expression thoughtful, "about horses and their ability to detect health issues in humans. Apparently, there are documented cases of horses responding to seizures before they happen, recognizing cancers, even detecting changes in blood sugar levels." Emma nodded, having heard some of this from Jake already. "You think that's why Spirit is so connected to Lily? Because of her heart condition?" "Maybe partly," Sarah allowed, "but I think it's more than that. Remember your dream about the chestnut horse when you were a child? The timing of Spirit's behavior at the rodeo, how he singled you both out from an entire crowd?" Linda set a cup of tea in front of Emma. "Some connections defy simple explanation," she said with the quiet wisdom of someone who had seen enough of life to accept its mysteries. "What matters is that Spirit recognized something in Lily and in you that created a bond strong enough to protect you when you needed it most." Outside, the sound of hooves on gravel announced Jake's return from exercising the other horses. He appeared at the kitchen door, his cheeks ruddy from the cold air. "You ladies need to come see this," he said, an unusual excitement in his voice. "Spirit's doing something I've never seen before." Curious, they bundled the babies up against the autumn chill and followed Jake to the paddock, where Spirit now spent his days, when not following Lily around the yard. The horse was moving in a pattern that looked almost deliberate, circling, stopping, then approaching the fence with careful steps before repeating the sequence. "He's been doing this for about 10 minutes, Jake explained. "At first I thought he was just restless, but look, it's the same pattern over and over." Emma watched, fascinated, as Spirit completed another circuit before approaching the fence where they stood. The horse lowered his head toward Lily, who reached out from Emma's arms with a delighted giggle, then backed up and began the sequence again. "It's like he's showing her something," Sarah said, adjusting Frank in her arms as the baby slept peacefully despite the cold. Jake nodded. That's what I thought. It reminds me of the barrel racing pattern, actually, but simplified. They continued watching as Spirit repeated the movement several more times, always ending by returning to the fence where Lily could see him clearly. The baby's eyes followed his movements with an intensity unusual for her age, as if she understood something the adults were missing. "I think he's teaching her," Emma said suddenly, the realization dawning with unexpected clarity. "Showing her how to move, how to be strong." The others looked at her with varying degrees of surprise, but no one dismissed the idea outright. After all they had witnessed over the past months, the concept of Spirit deliberately teaching Lily seemed no more far-fetched than his initial recognition of her at the rodeo, or his fierce protection when Jason appeared. As if confirming Emma's theory, Spirit stopped his pattern and stood quietly at the fence, his intelligent eyes fixed on Lily with unmistakable focus. The baby reached out again, her small hand connecting with his muzzle in what had become their familiar greeting. "Whatever he's doing," Linda said softly, "that horse loves your daughter, Emma, as much as any of us do." Emma felt tears prick at her eyes, not from sadness but from the overwhelming gratitude that had become a constant companion since that fateful day at the rodeo. "I never thought we'd find this," she admitted. "A home, a family, safety." Sarah squeezed her arm gently. "You know, when I had to stop competing because of my pregnancy, I thought it was the end of something important. I never imagined it was actually the beginning." They stood together in companionable silence, watching as Spirit continued his gentle interaction with Lily. The horse's earlier agitation around Jason had disappeared completely, replaced by the calm, nurturing presence that had first drawn them all together. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the ranch, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. From the terror of life with Jason to the unexpected sanctuary of the Miller Ranch, from the isolation of running to the warmth of being embraced by a family that had chosen her and Lily as their own. And through it all, Spirit, the unlikely guardian who had recognized something in a crying baby that day at the rodeo and changed all their lives in the process. "We should head in before the babies get too cold," Linda said eventually, breaking the peaceful silence. "I've got stew simmering for dinner." As they turned toward the house, Spirit whinnied softly, a sound that had become as familiar to Emma as Lily's babbling or Sarah's laugh. She paused, looking back at the horse who had become so much more than just an animal to them. "Thank you," she whispered, knowing he couldn't understand her words but believing somehow that he comprehended her gratitude nonetheless. In response, Spirit tossed his head in what almost looked like a nod before trotting to the far end of the paddock, where he could maintain his watch over the cottage and main house through the night. Later that evening, as Emma settled Lily into her crib in what had officially become their permanent home at the cottage, she gazed out the window at the silhouette of Spirit standing sentinel in the moonlight. The horse's unwavering commitment to protecting her daughter still amazed her even after all these months. "Your guardian angel has 4 legs and a mane," she murmured to the sleeping Lily, smoothing back her fine hair. "But I think he might be the most powerful angel of all." From the main house, the soft cry of baby Frank drifted through the night air, a sound of new beginnings, of life continuing its cycle. Emma smiled, feeling the deep contentment of someone who had found her place in the world after years of searching. Outside, Spirit shifted position slightly, adjusting his vigil to keep both houses in view. His ears flicked forward at Frank's cry, then relaxed as the sound faded. All was well with his expanded herd, and the night was peaceful. For Emma, watching this silent exchange between two worlds, the human and the equine, was the final confirmation of what she had come to believe since that first extraordinary moment at the rodeo, that some connections transcended understanding, that protection could come from the most unexpected sources, and that family was not always defined by blood, but by the unbreakable bonds of love and loyalty that formed when one soul recognized another across the crowded arena of life.